There comes a moment in life when you realize that being strong doesn't mean you stop hurting. It means the hurt no longer gets to decide who you become. Maybe you've spent years trying to hold yourself together while quietly questioning your own worth. Maybe someone disappointed you, betrayed your trust, walked away, or made you feel as though you weren't enough. And perhaps the hardest part wasn't what they did. It was what you started believing about yourself afterward. You began to doubt your voice, your choices, your ability to begin again. But there is something you need to remember today. Your circumstances can wound you without defining you. Welcome back to Focus with Maya. Today, we're exploring 10 powerful lessons inspired by the themes of dignity, resilience, courage, self respect, and emotional strength associated with Maya Angelou's life and wisdom. These aren't lessons about becoming cold or shutting people out. They're about becoming so grounded within yourself that disappointment no longer destroys your sense of who you are. Because mental strength isn't about having no emotions. It's about learning how to feel deeply without allowing every emotion to control your decisions. It's knowing when to speak and when silence protects your peace. It's understanding that kindness does not require you to tolerate disrespect. And it's realizing that sometimes the person you have been waiting to rescue you is the person you see in the mirror every morning. Think about how much energy you've spent trying to be understood by people who had already decided not to understand you. What if that energy could finally come home to you? What if the next chapter of your life doesn't require you to become someone else, but simply to stop abandoning yourself? Stay with me because the first lesson begins with something many people misunderstand about strength. And once you see it differently, you may never look at your struggles the same way again. Lesson 1. Stop measuring your worth through other people's approval. One of the quietest ways we lose ourselves is by constantly asking other people to tell us who we are. You may not even realize you're doing it. You look at someone's reaction and wonder, did I say something wrong? You send a message and wait anxiously for a response. Someone becomes distant, and suddenly you're replaying every conversation, searching for the moment you became unworthy of their attention. And when someone praises you, you feel valuable. When they criticize you, you feel small. That is an exhausting way to live. Because if your sense of worth depends on how other people see you, then your emotional stability is always in someone else's hands. Mental strength begins when you understand that another person's opinion can describe their perspective, but it cannot determine your value. Imagine a woman who has spent years being the dependable one. She helps everyone. She listens, she forgives. She makes herself available even when she's exhausted. But the moment she finally says no, someone calls her selfish. For a while she believes them. She wonders whether she has changed, whether she has become difficult, whether being a good person means constantly sacrificing herself. Then one day she realizes something simple but life-changing. Saying no didn't make her cruel. It simply revealed who had become comfortable with her always saying yes. That realization can hurt, but it can also set you free. You don't have to prove your goodness by tolerating what breaks you. You don't have to explain every boundary to someone committed to crossing it. And you don't have to shrink yourself so another person can remain comfortable. Self-respect is not arrogance. It is the quiet decision to stop negotiating against your own dignity. So ask yourself honestly, whose approval am I still chasing, and what part of myself am I sacrificing to receive it? The answer may reveal more than you expect, because the moment you stop asking everyone else for permission to value yourself, something inside you begins to settle. And that calm becomes the foundation for the next lesson, one that can completely change the way you respond to the people who hurt you. Lesson 2. You can be kind without becoming easy to hurt. There is a difference between having a soft heart and having no boundaries. Somewhere along the way, many people learned that being kind means being endlessly available. So they forgive before the other person has changed. They keep explaining themselves to someone who refuses to listen. They give second chances, third chances, sometimes 10th chances, hoping that patience will eventually teach someone how to value them. But kindness without boundaries can become self-abandonment. And you were never meant to disappear inside your goodness. Think about the person who keeps answering the late-night call from someone who only remembers them when life becomes difficult. They listen, they comfort, they give advice. Then, when they need support, there is suddenly silence. Maybe you know that feeling. You tell yourself they're going through something. I should understand, and understanding is beautiful. But understanding someone's pain does not require you to volunteer for more of your own. You can understand why someone behaves badly and still decide that their behavior is no longer acceptable in your life. That is emotional maturity. Real strength doesn't turn your heart to stone. It teaches your heart where the door should be. There will always be people who mistake your patience for permission. They may become surprised when you finally say, "This is no longer okay with me." Let them be surprised. You are not responsible for maintaining an old version of yourself simply because other people benefited from it. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is stop arguing, stop convincing, and stop trying to make someone recognize your value. You simply step back, not because you hate them, because you finally understand that peace is also something worth protecting. If you're learning to choose kindness without abandoning yourself, write boundaries in the comments. Let that word represent the promise you're making to yourself. And remember this, you can forgive someone without giving them the same access to you. You can love someone and still walk away. You can wish someone well and refuse to follow them into chaos. That isn't weakness. That is a person who has finally learned that compassion should include compassion for themselves. And once you learn that, you're ready for something even harder. Learning how to stop letting your past control the person you become next. Lesson 3. Your past deserves compassion, not control. There are things that happened to you that you didn't choose, a betrayal you never saw coming, a rejection that made you question your worth, a season when you gave everything you had and still watched something important fall apart. And sometimes, even after the situation is over, you continue living inside it. You replay the conversation. You imagine what you should have said. You wonder what would have happened if you had made a different decision. The mind has a strange habit of returning to old pain, as though finding the perfect explanation might somehow change the ending. But it won't. You can learn from yesterday without continuing to live there. Think about someone who made a mistake years ago and still introduces themselves through that mistake. They say, "I ruined my chance. I trusted the wrong person. I wasted so much time. I should have known better." But listen carefully. You knew what you knew with the understanding you had at that time. You cannot judge your younger self using wisdom you only gained later. That doesn't mean avoiding responsibility. If you made mistakes, own them. Repair what you can. Learn what you need to learn. But don't turn accountability into lifelong punishment. There is a difference between saying, "I made a mistake," and saying, "I am a mistake." One creates growth. The other creates a prison. Mental strength requires you to separate what happened from who you are. You were hurt, but you are not only the person who was hurt. You failed, perhaps. But you are not failure. Someone walked away. That doesn't mean you are unlovable. A chapter ended. That doesn't mean the entire story ended with it. Your past can become a teacher without becoming your identity. So when an old memory returns tonight, instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" ask yourself, "What did this experience teach me about the person I want to become?" That question changes everything. Because healing doesn't always mean forgetting what happened. Sometimes healing means remembering it without allowing it to take your future hostage. And when you finally stop fighting the person you used to be, you create room to become the person you were always capable of becoming. Lesson 4. Learn to sit with yourself without running from yourself. There is a kind of loneliness that has nothing to do with being alone. You can be surrounded by people, answering messages, laughing at dinner, going through your normal routine, and still feel like you have nowhere to place the parts of yourself that are hurting. So you stay busy, you keep scrolling, you keep working, you keep talking, you keep finding something to occupy the silence. Because sometimes silence asks questions we've been avoiding. Am I actually happy? Why am I still holding on? What do I want now? Not what does everyone else expect from me? Those questions can feel uncomfortable, but discomfort is not always a warning sign. Sometimes it is an invitation. A mentally strong person learns how to sit quietly enough to hear what their life has been trying to tell them. Imagine coming home after a difficult day. Nobody is there. No one needs anything from you. There is no conversation to distract you from your thoughts. At first, the silence feels heavy, then something changes. You realize you don't have to perform anymore. You don't have to convince anyone that you're okay. You can admit that you're tired. You can admit that you're disappointed. You can admit that you're afraid. And strangely enough, when you stop pretending that these feelings aren't there, they often become less frightening. Emotional strength isn't the ability to suppress uncomfortable feelings. It's the ability to sit beside them without allowing them to become your permanent home. Give yourself moments without noise. Take a walk without your phone demanding your attention. Sit with a cup of tea and let your thoughts arrive without immediately judging them. Write down what you've been afraid to say out loud. You may discover that underneath the anger is grief. Underneath the anxiety is uncertainty. Underneath the need for approval is a deep desire to feel worthy. And once you understand what is really happening inside you, you can finally begin responding to yourself with wisdom instead of criticism. You don't need to escape yourself. You need to become a safe place for yourself. Because when you can be alone without feeling abandoned, you gain a kind of freedom that no outside person can give you. And that freedom prepares you for the next lesson. How to remain steady when life refuses to go according to your plans. Lesson 5. Stop trying to control what was never yours to control. Some of the deepest exhaustion in life comes from fighting battles that were never yours to win. You try to control what someone thinks of you. You try to control whether someone stays. You try to control how quickly life changes, when an opportunity arrives, whether a relationship survives, whether another person finally understands the pain they caused. And when none of it responds to your effort, you feel powerless. But there is a difference between being powerless and releasing control. Releasing control means recognizing where your responsibility ends. You can choose your words. You can choose your actions. You can choose whether you return to the same situation that keeps hurting you. But you cannot force someone to become honest. You cannot make someone appreciate you. You cannot make the past apologize. And you cannot guarantee that every good decision will produce an easy outcome. That realization can feel painful at first. But it can also feel like taking a weight off your shoulders. Think about how much energy you spend wondering whether someone will finally change. You imagine the conversation. You rehearse what you'll say. You picture the apology you deserve. Meanwhile, your life is still moving. Days become weeks. Weeks become years. At some point, you have to ask yourself, how much of my present am I willing to sacrifice waiting for someone else to become different? That question requires courage, because sometimes acceptance doesn't look like approving of what happened. Sometimes it simply means saying, this is what happened. I cannot change it, but I can decide what happens next. That is where your strength begins to return. You stop chasing explanations from people who refuse to give them. You stop trying to force closed doors open. You stop treating uncertainty as an emergency. And slowly you begin investing your energy where it can actually create something in your choices, your habits, your healing, your character, your future. Life will always contain things outside your control. The goal isn't to control everything. The goal is to become so grounded in yourself that uncertainty no longer destroys your peace. And once you understand that, you become ready for another difficult truth. Sometimes becoming stronger means learning how to disappoint people without betraying yourself. Lesson 6. Stop being afraid of disappointing people. There is a particular kind of fear that can quietly control your entire life. It sounds like this. What will they think? Will they be upset with me? What if they don't understand? What if they stop loving me? And because you fear disappointing people, you say yes when your heart says no. You stay silent when something matters to you. You accept treatment you would never want for someone you love. You become so focused on keeping everyone comfortable that you slowly become uncomfortable inside your own life. But here is something you may